Los Angeles, the city of dreams, glimmers under a blanket of golden lights. It's a place where wealth and ambition collide, where every corner hides a story waiting to be uncovered. Beneath the glamour, the laughter, and the endless parties, lives change in ways no one ever expects. Amid the buzz of a grand celebration, Prince Khalid from Dubai arrived. He wasn't just another face in the crowd. His presence was magnetic. Khalid had come to celebrate his closest friend Ahmed's wedding, a lavish affair that brought together the elite of the world. But in this sea of luxury and glittering smiles, his attention locked onto someone unexpected. There she was, Elena, a woman whose quiet elegance seemed to shine brighter than the chandeliers above them. She wasn't chasing attention, yet she captured his completely. Khalid, confident in his charm, made his move. He was used to admiration, to doors opening for him without effort. But this time, things were different. Elena didn't respond the way others did. She turned him down, her soft words carrying a firmness he wasn't used to. That moment wasn't just a rejection. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. What Khalid couldn't know, and what Elena carried silently, was a secret so heavy it shaped her every decision. A secret shared only with her mother, whose quiet strength was her only refuge. As the night continued, choices were made, paths crossed, and lives began to intertwine. What would you do if you had a secret that could change everything? One you couldn't share with anyone? Tell us in the comments below. Welcome to Shocking True Crime Stories HQ. A big thank you to all my viewers, and a special shout out to my subscribers for your unwavering support as we explore famous and hidden true crime stories. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more fascinating content. The air buzzed with anticipation. Los Angeles had seen its share of grand events, but tonight, the city seemed to shimmer just a little more. The wedding of Ahmad, a man known for his connections and wealth, was no ordinary affair. Guests arrived in sleek cars, stepping out in dazzling outfits, their laughter echoing under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Prince Khalid, visiting from Dubai, was among them. His presence was unmistakable. Every step he took carried the confidence of a man accustomed to power, his tailored suit hinting at unimaginable wealth. His watch, worth more than most could earn in a lifetime, gleamed under the lights. Wherever he went, heads turned. He wasn't just part of the celebration. He was the center of attention. The wedding itself was a spectacle. Roses imported from the far corners of the world adorned every corner of the grand ballroom. Tables groaned under the weight of delicacies prepared by the finest chefs. A band played music that seemed to float through the air, wrapping the guests in its melody. It was a night meant to dazzle, a moment meant to be remembered. Yet, amidst all this grandeur, Khalid's focus shifted. Across the room, someone caught his eye. She wasn't dressed in jewels or dripping in wealth like the others. There was something different about her, a quiet grace that stood out in a room full of extravagance. She moved effortlessly, her smile soft but guarded, as if she carried something deep within her. Elena. Her name passed through the whispers of the guests, but Khalid didn't need an introduction. He was drawn to her, captivated by something he couldn't quite define. In that instant, the noise of the wedding faded, and all he could see was her. But what he didn't know, what no one in that room could guess, was that Elena's story carried a weight that could shatter even the most unshakable of lives. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, the kind that made people notice her without knowing why. Elena was graceful, her movements calm and deliberate, her smile faint but kind. To the world, she seemed unshaken, someone who moved through life with a strength few could match. But beneath her composed exterior was a burden she had carried her entire life, a secret she guarded fiercely, one that shaped everything she did. Elena was born with HIV. It was a fact that defined her childhood, her relationships, and her future. She grew up learning about limitations, rules, and the importance of silence. Her mother had been her guide through it all. While others might have seen her illness as a reason to pity or avoid her, her mother saw only her daughter's resilience. At home, away from prying eyes, Her mother's voice was a constant reminder of hope. "You are more than this," she would say. "You are strong, and you can live a life that matters." Those words echoed in Elena's mind during her hardest moments. Her mother was her anchor, the only person who knew the truth, and the one who never let her lose sight of her worth. But the reality of her illness wasn't easy to escape. There were the medications she had to take, the doctor's appointments, the careful explanations she rehearsed in case someone ever found out. She lived with a constant fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of what people would say if they knew. Despite it all, she refused to let her diagnosis define her. Elena made a choice every day to live fully. She worked hard to create a life that felt normal, even if her normal was different from everyone else's. Her days were spent focusing on what she could control: her career, her passions, her ability to bring joy to others. But there were moments in the quiet of the night when the weight of it all pressed down on her. She would sit alone and wonder if anyone could truly love her if they knew the truth. Her mother's words gave her strength, but the questions never fully left her. Have you ever kept a secret because you were afraid of what others might think? Imagine carrying that secret every single day. Tell us in the comments if you've ever felt this way. We'd love to hear your story. In the world Khalid knew, getting what he wanted had never been difficult. He was a prince, a man of unimaginable wealth and power. He had spent his life in a world where doors opened without question, where people admired him, and where he was always the center of attention. But there was something about Elena that was different. When he first saw her at Ahmed's wedding, something shifted inside him. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was her calm, her quiet strength. She wasn't impressed by his wealth or the flashy lifestyle he led. That intrigued him more than anything else. Khalid couldn't understand why Elena wasn't drawn to him the way everyone else was. He had everything anyone could want: money, luxury, status. But to Elena, none of that seemed to matter. She didn't shy away from him out of fear or jealousy. No, she simply didn't care about his riches. And that was a challenge Khalid couldn't ignore. He began to pursue her with a persistence he had never shown before. He invited her to private dinners in the finest restaurants, treated her to gifts that were more valuable than most could dream of. He shared stories of his travels, his success, and his power. He wanted to show her a world she couldn't turn down. But Elena remained distant. Her resistance only seemed to push him harder. She didn't want the lifestyle he was offering. She didn't need it. What she needed was something Khalid couldn't offer her: understanding, compassion, and trust. Still, he didn't give up. Every day, Khalid tried something new, hoping that eventually, Elena would let down her guard. He would send her flowers, arrange for private performances, and ask her to join him at exclusive events. But Elena only responded with politeness, never giving him the kind of attention he so desperately sought. In private, Khalid turned to Ahmad for advice. He trusted his friend, confided in him about his growing obsession with Elena. Ahmad listened carefully, offering the kind of insight that only a close friend could give. "She's not like the others," Khalid admitted. "She doesn't care about my wealth or the things I can give her. I don't know how to make her see me the way I see her." Ahmad, who knew Khalid better than anyone, could sense the weight in his friend's words. But he couldn't help but wonder why Khalid was so fixated on this one woman. Ahmad had seen countless women come and go in his life, but none of them had managed to capture Khalid's attention for this long. "You just need to show her who you really are," Ahmad suggested. "Maybe she'll come around when she sees you're more than just your wealth." Khalid thought about those words long after their conversation had ended. He was determined to win her over, to break through whatever walls Elena had built around her heart. He didn't realize, however, that there were things about her life, that he could never understand. The more he tried to charm her, the more he failed to see the truth about who she really was. Elena wasn't interested in the lavish life he lived. She wasn't moved by the glittering world he inhabited. She had her own struggles, her own secrets, and no amount of wealth could ever change that. But Khalid wasn't ready to give up just yet. He was too accustomed to winning, too used to getting what he wanted. He believed that with enough persistence, Elena would eventually come around. What he didn't know was that in trying so hard to get closer to her, he was about to change the course of both of their lives in ways he could never have imagined. It was a night like any other in Los Angeles, full of lights, laughter, and promises of joy. The city, with its endless skyline, seemed to hold its breath as the stars glittered above. Yet, beneath this dazzling exterior, something far more uncertain was unfolding. This night would not pass quietly into the shadows. Khalid, having spent weeks attempting to win Elena's trust, had finally managed to convince her to join him for a late-night walk by the beach. He had promised nothing more than a peaceful evening, a moment of calm away from the pressures of life. But Elena, struggling with the weight of her own secret, wasn't sure if she could continue to keep the walls she had built around her heart so carefully intact. As they walked along the sand, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore seemed to drown out the thoughts racing through her mind. She had always known she could never tell Khalid the truth. There were so many reasons, so many fears that kept her silent. But now, in the quiet of the night, Elena found herself questioning everything. The pressure of keeping such a secret, of living a life where every interaction had to be carefully guarded, was starting to break her. Khalid was persistent, yes, but it wasn't just his wealth or status that made him stand out. There was something in his eyes, a kindness that she hadn't expected from someone so used to getting whatever he wanted. She had seen a side of him that no one else had, his vulnerability, his openness, and his deep curiosity about her. Still, she couldn't ignore the fear that churned inside her. Telling Khalid about her HIV was not just about sharing a medical condition. It was about revealing a truth that could change everything. It wasn't just her health at stake, but her entire life, her relationships, her future. As they strolled in silence, Khalid finally broke the quiet. His voice was soft, but there was something in it that made Elena's heart race. "Elena," he said, his words careful, measured. "I don't know why you keep holding back from me. I know there's something more, something you're not telling me. If you're afraid of me, of how I'll react, I need you to know that it won't change anything. I want to understand. I want to help." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Elena stopped walking, the weight of his gaze like a force pulling at her chest. She had never heard him speak like this before. The truth was, she hadn't known how to respond to someone who seemed so genuine, someone who truly wanted to know her, not just the version of her she presented to the world. But in that moment, Elena felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. Yet, as quickly as the thought came, doubt crept in. Would it change the way Khalid saw her? Would he look at her differently, pull away in fear, disgust, or pity? She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts, trying to sort through the chaos in her mind. In the end, Elena knew she couldn't keep living in the shadows, hiding behind a smile that wasn't truly hers. She had to decide, once and for all, whether she would let this secret define her, or if she could finally find someone who would accept her for who she truly was. But as she opened her mouth to speak, the words stuck in her throat. Khalid, sensing her struggle, stepped closer, his voice filled with concern. "Elena, please. Whatever it is, you can tell me. You don't have to be afraid." The air around them felt thick, heavy with tension, as Elena made her choice. She had been fighting this battle alone for so long. But now, standing beside Khalid, something inside her shifted. She had to trust him, or risk losing everything. Do you think it's fair for someone to keep a secret like this? Why or why not? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the days that followed their fateful night, Khalid couldn't stop thinking about Elena. Her confession had weighed on him, but he tried to convince himself that everything would be fine. After all, he had everything he needed: money, connections, the best doctors at his disposal. He could handle anything that came his way, or so he thought. But as the weeks passed, Khalid started to feel a change. It began with a slight fatigue, something he could easily ignore. He pushed through it, focusing on his work, his luxurious lifestyle, the busy social circles he frequented. But the tiredness lingered, slowly creeping into every part of his day. He couldn't shake it. At first, it was just a small discomfort, but soon, Khalid began noticing more troubling symptoms. Night sweats, chills that came and went without warning, and a feeling of weakness that no amount of rest could fix. His body, once strong and vibrant, was starting to betray him. He tried to brush it off, convinced it was just stress, maybe even the change in climate after his travels. But the symptoms grew worse. Khalid knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He reached out to his personal doctor, the one who had seen him through everything in his life, a trusted professional who had been with him for years. The diagnosis came quickly, but it hit him like a thunderclap. He had contracted HIV. The disease had taken root in his body, and now there was no turning back. Khalid, the man who had everything, the man who could buy anything, was now facing a battle he couldn't win with money or status. It wasn't just the shock of the disease that rattled him. It was the realization that his life, his carefully crafted world, was slipping through his fingers. He had thought he was invincible. He had thought his wealth and power could shield him from anything. But now, he understood the cruel truth. No amount of money could save him. Khalid sought out the best medical treatment money could buy. He flew in specialists from across the globe, sparing no expense in his attempt to reverse the damage the virus had done. He tried the latest treatments, the most advanced therapies, anything that might help. But despite all his resources, his health continued to deteriorate. Each day brought a new struggle, a new reminder that his wealth couldn't protect him from the harsh reality of his illness. The virus spread, weakening his immune system, and soon, even the strongest treatments seemed to have no effect. His friends and family watched, helpless. They had seen Khalid conquer so many challenges in his life, but this was different. This was something none of them could fix. As his strength faded, so did the illusions of invincibility he had carried with him for so long. It was a cruel reminder that, no matter how rich or powerful someone was, there were some things they couldn't control. Khalid had learned that the hard way. He had once believed he could buy anything, except the one thing that mattered most: time. As the months passed, Khalid's health continued to decline. His once vibrant face grew pale, his eyes dimmed, and the energy that had once defined him seemed to vanish. Even with the best doctors, the finest care, and the wealth that had once bought him anything he desired, nothing could change his fate. And as his world grew smaller, Khalid couldn't help but reflect on the choices that had led him here. The night with Elena, the pursuit of something he had never fully understood. It was a haunting thought, knowing that his life, his health, and everything he had built had been irrevocably altered by a single moment. A moment he had once believed could never have consequences. In the end, the wealth and power Khalid had built his life around could not shield him from the reality he had to face. He had learned the hardest lesson of all, that even the richest, most powerful man could not escape the consequences of his actions. In the quiet of her home, Elena's world was often a stark contrast to the glamour of the life that surrounded her. While the city of Los Angeles buzzed with lights, parties, and endless opportunities, her reality was different. Beneath her composed exterior, there was a burden no one could see. It was a burden she had carried since the moment she was born, an illness that never let her forget its presence. But Elena had always found strength in the one person who truly understood her, her mother. Through every test, every hospital visit, and every sleepless night, her mother had been there. She wasn't just a caregiver. She was Elena's rock, the constant source of reassurance when the weight of her secret felt like too much to bear. Her mother never allowed her to feel broken. "You are not your illness," she would say, her voice soft but firm. "You are more than this, more than what anyone can see." Elena believed those words. She had to. They were her lifeline. And so, she faced each day with strength, not because she didn't fear the disease, but because she refused to let it define her. She worked hard to live a life as normal as possible, despite the judgment she knew was out there. People would never understand why she refused to share her condition, why she kept it hidden from everyone except her mother. But how could she explain something so private? How could she ask for understanding in a world that too often turned away from what it didn't want to see? In the days following her encounter with Khalid, Elena wondered how much longer she could keep this secret. The guilt weighed on her, knowing she had exposed him to something so dangerous, something she herself had lived with for years. But no matter how much she struggled with it, she never allowed the shame of her illness to take over her spirit. She fought back, not with anger, but with grace, just as her mother had always taught her. Meanwhile, Khalid's decline had not gone unnoticed. The once vibrant and confident man was now a shadow of his former self. His health had deteriorated rapidly. No amount of money or expert care could save him. And as the news of his condition spread, there was a strange sense of irony that hovered over everything. Khalid, who had once thought of himself as untouchable, was now facing a harsh reality. His recklessness had consequences, and now he was paying the price. Elena had been part of his fall, but she was not the cause. The disease that Khalid had contracted was a result of his choices, his desire to ignore the risks for the sake of his own desires. It was a powerful reminder that even the richest man, with all his wealth and status, couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. No matter how much he tried to buy his way out, the outcome was the same. The world had its rules, and no one was exempt from them. As Elena watched Khalid suffering from a distance, she couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for him. It was a feeling she hadn't expected to have. She knew the pain of living with the virus, the emotional toll it took on someone who had to hide it from the world. But Khalid had had choices. He had known what he was doing when he pursued her, when he allowed his desires to cloud his judgment. And now, here he was, a victim of his own decisions. For Elena, it was a grim reminder of the risks we all take, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It was a reminder of the fine line between living a life of freedom and giving in to the temptations of the moment. Khalid's downfall had come so suddenly, so completely, and yet it was a fate that had been inevitable from the start. And as the days passed, Elena's strength, the strength her mother had instilled in her, only grew. She had learned long ago that life was fragile. It was not guaranteed, but it was also precious, and she had learned to value it, to cherish the moment she had. She knew that no matter what happened, she would face it with dignity, just as she had always done. Because in the end, it wasn't the illness that defined her. It was her will to live, her strength to face each day with hope, no matter what life threw her way. It was the quiet, unspoken truth that her mother had taught her. Life may not always be kind, but it is still beautiful, and in that beauty, there is strength. As the story draws to a close, there are lessons that cannot be ignored. First, there is the danger of making assumptions. Khalid, with all his wealth and confidence, assumed he could control every situation. He thought his money and charm could buy him what he wanted, but he learned, too late, that some things are beyond his reach. Elena, on the other hand, carried a secret that shaped her every choice. Her quiet strength was born from the heavy weight of something no one could see. Yet, the truth of her illness was something she could never hide forever, and the consequences of one night changed everything. But what stands out the most is the value of human connection. The bond between Elena and her mother was a light that helped her navigate the darkness. Her mother's unwavering support gave her the courage to face each day, no matter how difficult it was. Their relationship was a reminder that even in the hardest of times, we are not alone. There is always someone who can offer strength when we need it the most. Lastly, we are reminded of the importance of compassion. It's easy to judge, to look at someone from the outside and make assumptions about their life. But the truth is, everyone carries their own burden. Elena did, and so did Khalid. Had they been more compassionate, more understanding, things might have turned out differently for both of them. So now, I want to hear from you. If you were in Khalid's or Elena's shoes, what would you have done differently? Could Khalid have made better choices? Could Elena have been more open about her secret? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the choices we make, the ones we regret, and the ones that change everything.